Welcome back to the BioWare base here at sunny San Diego. We're here during Comic-Con 2011, and this is the last Q&A that we'll be doing today for Star Wars The Old Republic. We had to send some of our developers back to Austin to work on the game. Apparently it still needs to be finished. So we have been left with James Olin, but that's the most important developer of all, because James knows everything and anything about the game, at least in theory. So we have James Olin here, who, as I say, is game director for BioWare Austin. My name is Stephen Reed, and I'm online community manager for the title. So we're taking questions from Twitter, as I understand it. I think you have to tweet at BioWare Pulse if you want to send in a question. And I think we still have a few people hanging around the BioWare base who are waiting to get into place in PvP. So we might get some questions from those guys too. But David Bass here is going to give us some questions from Twitter to start us off.
All right, let's start off with a question from Asros. Will romancing a character as a Jedi or Sith adversely affect your story, as both orders look down on romance in the lore?
So it won't adversely affect your story. It will obviously have an impact on your story, and specifically your light side, dark side rating. The Jedi, as if you've seen the movies, don't look very fondly upon romance, so if you start taking the romance options, that will lead to dark side points. However, you don't have that same problem on the Sith side. So actually your romances are a little bit easier if you're a Sith warrior or Inquisitor.
Okay, easier to fall in love as a Sith then. All right.
Force Heal asks, will you have support for macros in the game at launch?
That's something we can't really answer at this point. It's something that we're looking at, but don't have a definitive answer on that right now.
Lady Hales asks, will there be more depth to closed captions than just dialogue subtitles? Will NPC-only conversations be subtitled?
All conversations will appear in the top left dialogue window. So, for example, if you come across some ambient conversations in the world, you'll be able to see it there in text.
All right, I got one from Dozer915. Do you have plans to have an authenticator for iOS and Android devices?
So security, and we obviously have a security authentication key fob in the collector's edition of the game. Security is something that we take very, very seriously. We're looking at our options for authenticators for launch, and we'll have more information as we get closer to launch.
One Soul 1982 asks, what is the most challenging thing about making an MMO, since this is BioWare's first major MMO?
What's the most challenging thing about making MMO? Well, there's so many challenges that it's hard to narrow down to one single challenge. I would say just the technology of having to run these massive virtual worlds with thousands of players able to coexist in them at the same time. That's the same challenge that anybody making an MMO has, and it's been a challenge for us as well. That's why we're taking our time to make sure that we have a really smooth and great launch.
Do we have any questions from anyone here in the base?
Anyone in the crowd got a question before I keep going?
David can run to you with a microphone.
Anybody in line for Old Republic want to ask a question? All right, I got one from Twitter. I apologize if I mess up these names. Ezzy Jenkins says, are there dynamic and permanent changes to the story based on light side or dark side choices you make?
Yeah, that's one of the big selling points of Star Wars The Old Republic. When you make a choice, it has a real impact on your story. If you make a dark side choice, if you kill somebody, he might have actually appeared later on in your story, but you killed him, so he will no longer show up. That's just one example.
We actually showed a video at our panel here at San Diego Comic-Con where a Jedi Knight who pursues a Sith Lord to Tatooine has the choice of basically sparing his life or taking his life. And if he chooses to spare his life, then he actually turns up a lot later in the story, pretty much a changed man. Obviously, if you take his life, well, you don't see him again.
All right, I finally have a question from someone in the line over here.
Hey there. I just had a question. Exactly how, this is for the people who didn't go to the panel, exactly how far in terms of customization can you customize your companions?
Question, how far can you customize your companions? Well, in terms of appearance, you can customize your companion by changing out his armor types, what he wears for boots, what he wears for gloves, helmet. You can change out his weapons. You can also actually modify his very appearance, his skin color, and basic facial features. But you can't do things like change his gender or his species.
Tor Report, one of our esteemed fan sites, asks, yesterday, Dallas Dickinson mentioned having 5 characters in 5 different guilds. Was he suggesting that 5 is the cap per account per server?
No, he was not. Dallas was just giving that as an example. We have not announced the cap yet on the number of characters that a player can have.
Bo Sjobek asks, how well has the Old Republic been running on lower-end machines? Does it require lowering lots of graphical options?
If you are running on the absolute min spec, yes, you're going to have to lower all the graphical options. That's just what you have to do when you have the minimum spec. However, if you're running on the recommended spec, you won't be having to do that.
Desert Fox asks, you guys stated that you play the way you like. Are you guys sticking to that? If I tank in PvE, can I do it well in PvP?
So the question is, if you play a certain way in PvE, can you play that way in PvP? Well, PvP is quite a different beast than PvE, so even if you have a favorite way of tanking, you're probably going to have to modify it if you're going to be successful. You can still have the same abilities in the same spec, but the way you play is going to have to be quite a bit different in PvP than it is in PvE. But that's just typical with any online game, or any game in general.
Anyone have a question in line while we're waiting? I'm pulling up some new questions here. Ben, I can't even pronounce that, asks, will the identity of the Emperor be revealed at all?
Ooh, he wants a spoiler.
Yeah, we're not
That's
really...
a big spoiler.
Yeah, we don't want to give away spoilers, so you're going to have to play the game all the way to the end to get the answer to that one.
But
Let's just
discover
say
that
that
Jar Jar Binks is in fact alive and well in the Old Republic. I'm just kidding.
Or is he? You have to play the game to see. No, he is. Just kidding.
Tor Wars, another one of our fan sites, asks, are names going to be unique?
Names are going to be unique per server, shard, whatever you want to call it.
Anyone in line? Sorry, my phone's a little slow at refreshing here. Zero Graph Trooper asks Steven, can I expect there will be some sort of train Easter egg in the game?
Sadly, I don't think my metaphors extend to putting Easter eggs in the game. Much as I would love to, see that happen. We do have trains. There's trains on Corellia, right?
Yes, there is. They're really cool trains.
Maybe put my face on the side of one. No, I'm just kidding. That would be terrible.
You've given me a great idea. No.
All right, here's one from Mitchell Cares. How will Sith assassin tanks be balanced to compete with standard tanks like the Sith Juggernaut?
I don't think we're balancing them to compare. They're going to play differently. They're both going to be tanks. They are going to tank differently because they're different classes. They have access to different abilities. They have different strengths and weaknesses.
All right, I have a number of questions. The same question from a number of people. Do you have any details to share about what the holocam does that's included in the game box for certain editions?
So we're still working out kind of final details on the virtual items. The one thing I will say on the holocam is that it would be a still-taking device as opposed to one that does video, which is something that somebody had asked me before.
AntRox09 says, will NPCs care more about your individual choices or your dark side, light side points?
Maybe your affection rating might play into that. I'm not sure.
Did you say NPCs, or
NPCs, not companions.
Or general NPCs?
Just general NPCs.
Yeah, so general NPCs will care about your actual choices. And that just makes sense because you can't really tell if someone's good or evil when you first meet them. You probably have to hang around with them for a little while before you can determine that, or maybe never.
I don't know. I'd say Darth Malgus looks evil from the minute I saw him.
Well, yeah, there's some characters that kind of are pretty obvious, but he's kind of an exception.
Kaliag asks, regarding the change to the ability to kill off your companions, do you feel like this decision freed you up to do more of your influencing them in the game?
I think we should be clear, it wasn't like an ability, which was labeled kill companion character.
No, I don't think she meant ability. I think she meant an option.
But it was a story choice.
Yeah, they were story choices, and it didn't really free us up. It was just something that came out of testing. It was It was a hard choice, like, because it is something that has been part of BioWare games before, but a massively multiplayer game is different from an RPG with a beginning and an end. So that's what kind of finally forced the decision.
Georg spoke a little bit about this on the forums recently, so people might want to check the dev tracker, which will lead you to Georg's response.
All right, another question from Asros, who says, how healing intensive is the game? Will healers be able to DPS, or will they have to focus 100% on healing like in other MMOs?
Actually, no. The healers are going to be quite good at dealing out damage in PvE. Obviously, if you're in a flashpoint or an operation where you're working with a party or groups of parties, you're going to have to fulfill your role, and that most likely will mean you're going to focus on healing.
Well, hey guys. Yeah,
Hey, what's going on? Bringing the crowd over to us.
Oh, I like that T-shirt. Oh, that's good. Oh, yeah. Anyway, has anyone got any questions?
Now
right
that you guys
here
are
in the
closer,
crowd?
yeah. Anyone have any questions they want to ask?
Holiday
So-
2011 is what we are currently targeting for our release date.
If we bought the collector's edition, do we get that statue?
You do not get that statue if you buy the collector's edition. You get a much smaller version of that statue. If we ship one of those statues in every collector's edition, it would cost you quite a lot of money.
Well, we might actually be giving out that statue. Remember, we have that little shrink ray machine. We shrink it. No, I'm just kidding. Bad joke. Terrible.
Here he goes again. Yeah, the Darth Malgus statue in the collector's edition is about 9 inches tall. Actually a slightly different sculpt than the one that we have there, but he's still pretty cool.
How early is a pre-order going to start playing?
How early can the pre-order people start playing?
We haven't talked about the exact length of time for early game access. It's a head start program, so it's not going to be like months and months. It will be days, maybe weeks, but we're determining that, and then we'll talk about that closer to launch.
Question on Twitter from Red Elton 80 regarding social points. Do we only get them from winning the speech rolls while in a group? Because I always lose those rolls.
So social points are points that you get when you're in multiplayer conversations, and as you get higher social points, it unlocks the ability to buy certain items for your character. For those who aren't aware of what social points are, they're meant to encourage people to group up and do multiplayer conversation. We're currently looking at giving social points for other group-based activities, and we are also looking at ways to make it so that people who win the roles all the time, that doesn't happen quite as often as it currently does in the game. That's an imbalance, and we have some ideas of how to fix that.
If you got the collector's edition, does that increase the likelihood of being able to beta test?
I'm afraid it doesn't right now. Currently right now, if you have the collector's edition, it gives you the early game access like everybody else, and the other items that we have planned for the collector's edition, but it doesn't increase your chances, I'm afraid.
That thing sold out fast. So.
It is absolutely not sold out. Collector's edition did sell out on Origin.com, but Origin had a very, very small allocation of the physical collector's edition. It has sold out temporarily on Amazon.com, but it's still absolutely available at retailers across the world. Yeah, you hit up the two places that were sold out first before you went to Best Buy. Okay. Well, yeah, you may have to search, but right now we definitely know that we haven't sold them out.
How long does the mount last that you get with additional deluxe, and what's in the vendor that you get from collectors?
So the question was, how long does the mount last?
The additional deluxe mount
Yeah.
that comes with it, how long that lasts for? Is it,
How long can you use it?
yeah, does it go with you at the level, or does it just stay?
Sure. Well, you don't get it at level 1, right?
Yeah, so the mount, and by mount, it's a speeder, that you get when you order the collector's edition. You get to keep it forever. The way we're doing speeders is, as they improve, we're not really increasing the speed. We want you to get a fast speeder as soon as you get it. So it's going to be useful all the way through. We're thinking of ways to make it. Well, actually, there's stuff that we're doing that I can't talk about right now, but we'll be talking about it in a couple weeks. We want to make it, the thing about the speeder in the collector's edition, we want to make sure that players really feel that it was worth getting. So we're making sure that it's a very cool item, and that that you're going to be happy about the fact that you got that speeder out of the collector's edition, because we know that we don't want to upset our fans by giving, they buy the collector's edition, and the speeder is not that cool. So,
And it's also in the digital deluxe edition, just to be clear. And what was the second half?
The vendor that comes in the collector.
Right.
What's on it? No, that's what everybody's asking the forums for all the
So there's been some discussion about the collector's edition and specifically the collector's store. We mentioned the other day, we couched it in terms of being a VIP lounge. It is an area in the game which is exclusive to people who own the collector's edition. However, it is not it is not a fabulous wonderland full of delights and items that no one else can possibly get hold of. There are plenty of very cool social places to go in the game, so don't feel that if you don't have the collector's edition that you will be, standing outside looking in, crying about the fact that you're not inside. It's really not that big a deal, and anyone who may be, for example, lording it over others on the forums about this should really knock it off. That said,
I don't know. It's pretty cool.
thanks for just
You're not helping.
undoing everything I just said, James.
No, it is what he said. It's just a cool kind of cantina area that's exclusive for you to go. It's like if you're a VIP going to a VIP club. That's the extent of it, but that's still kind of cool. It's you also get the store, which is exclusive. It has items in it that aren't going to make you more powerful than people at your same level, but you will be able to get items that other players won't be able to get. So it's more of an aesthetic thing. You're going to look different.
I think it's fair to say that collector's item store will absolutely not unbalance the game. That's not the game.
All right, let's head back to Twitter real quick.
Except for the Death Star laser cannon you get to attach to your starship.
Stop it right now.
All right.
One Soul 1982 has another question. How often do you guys get to play the game, and what would you say your best memory of it is so far?
Well,
All day, every day?
yeah. As my
your
job
case.
is the game director, I have to play the game all the time. My favorite moment. I have a bunch of favorite moments. Usually, it's when a feature surprises me because it works better the first time around than features usually do. That's what usually makes me happy. Usually when a new feature comes in, it's a broken pile of crap, and we have to take a lot of effort to get it up to the level of quality our fans are expecting. So when a feature comes in and it just works right off the bat, that gets me. That makes me feel really warm inside.
And to be clear, James is looking at builds which are many, many weeks, in some cases, I'm sure more than that, away from being seen by our testers. So your initial view of a feature is going to be very different than someone who's in testing.
That's true.
I don't get to play the game all day. I do get to play in my spare time, which is, of course, copious. And my favorite moment, actually, I think, was quite early on when I was playing the Jedi Knight on Tython. And there's a quest pretty early on where you come across two Padawans who are obviously involved in a romantic relationship, and you basically get the choice of essentially turning them in to the Jedi Council or leaving them be to go about their romantic business. And the Jedi Code would suggest that you should go and inform the Council, because this is not something that's allowed. And I think the minute that I found that quest, I had my first moment of like, what do I want to do? Because it was a genuine moral choice, and also for me, it was a point at which it said, you know what, you can roleplay your character here. So in my case, I actually chose, as I recall, I chose to let them go and told them that I wasn't going to tell the Council, and then I went and told the Council anyway. So that was the kind of Jedi I was playing.
Actually, you can even feel dirtier, because as the Jedi Knight on the first world, you have the opportunity of getting in romance yourself. So then you can get into romance yourself and then turn them in. Double standards.
Double dark side points.
I did that. I got in a lot of trouble for it.
So how is in-game tiered loot working? Is it a piece-by-piece system where you slowly build the set, or a token system?
Say that first part again. The
In-game tiered loot, like an armor set from like the in-game raid content and stuff like that?
Basically, if in our armor sets, are individual pieces going to drop, or are you going to get tokens that you can then end up trading in as you get enough?
Currently, individual pieces are going to drop, but we're always looking at game balance for the Elder game and changing things up. So I don't want to say that we might not go to a token-based system at some point.
That's in pretty extensive testing right now.
I have a question from Twitter here, and I have to make sure I phrase it properly so it's not taken out of context. M. Lagerlof asks, will low-end MacBook Pros be able to run the Old Republic in boot camp?
So in testing, you can definitely run the game under boot camp. I couldn't comment on low-end MacBook Pros.
Well, I actually own one, and it runs just fine.
Is it low-end?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
But how do you define low end?
They only make like a low, mid, and high.
Well, when did you buy yours? That's really the question.
2 years ago?
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it is possible, to run the game under boot camp, but officially we do not support that. So.
Correct. Although we did release the minimum specs this week along with the pre-order stuff, so you can take a look and see if your MacBook fits into those specs, besides the fact that it's a Mac.
I have 2 questions. One, are starships going to be customizable?
Only in terms of their exterior weaponry, and by that I mean in the space combat game, you can upgrade the lasers and the shields and the engines, and I've forgotten something probably. So you can sort of have, more power and maneuverability in
The missiles.
The missiles. When you're playing the space combat game, it doesn't affect the exterior appearance of the ship right now. And the other question, which is the interior of the ship, and that's something that's been talked about. It's on the wall of crazy, but is it fair to say that it's unlikely to make it for ship right now?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay, sounds borderline to me.
And the second one is, I know how whatever you do in the game will basically reflect off either being dark or good. If you're a Jedi Knight and you go to really dark, if you do a lot of bad stuff, would it automatically switch you to Sith after being so dark? Or are you just going to be some dark Jedi?
No, you remain a dark Jedi. The thing is, you're not really, while you're making evil decisions, you're still a member of the Republic. You don't really give a crap about the Sith because your entire quest is going to revolve fighting the Sith. So you're not making friends with them. Often you're killing very important Sith during your time as a Jedi Knight. So you are just going to be a very dark Jedi who is so far, escaping undetected by the Jedi Council.
Daniel Erickson, when he was asked about this, made the analogy of World War II, in that you have some soldiers who could be on the Allied side who were pretty nasty soldiers, but were still fighting against the other side. So we allow for that sort of shades of morality from being very, very good and law-abiding and everything else, and being pretty evil, but still on the Galactic Republic or the Sith Empire side. And as Daniel has said again, hello Daniel. It's very interesting to play a light side Sith Empire character because you get to skirt around some interesting moral choices and try and pretend that you're evil when you're really trying to be good.
Let's jump back to Twitter for a second. Brian K555 asks, will fellow group members have the ability to keep me from seeing a cutscene or dialogue window by skipping them?
No. Though there is the social pressure of if everyone else in your group is skipping lines for you to skip as well.
And if they're yelling at you on vent, then I don't know, you might lose friends.
But it's if you don't skip, then it does not skip.
No.
How are you handling death penalties, and is resurrection more of a clone thing, or
I know all about this.
Yeah, so our death system is one of the more forgiving death systems in MMOs, and the reason we've done that is because we actually want to make the combat more challenging. And the thing is, if you have super challenging combat and a really unforgiving death system, then your players want to kill you. So you kind of have to err on the side of making one easier if you're going to make the other harder. So our death system actually allows you to you can respawn in place, essentially, if you die. And then there's a big cooldown. So it's essentially, and this is our current death system, which we're experimenting with right now, but you get killed, and you decide to respawn in place, and then you have a chance to move away from the enemy before you can gather aggro again. You can't do anything. If you do anything at that point, such as attack someone or use an ability, you immediately can gain aggro. So it just allows you to move to a place where you can then continue the combat. However, it's balanced so that if you, for example, die twice, there's a big cooldown, and if you die 3 times, you're probably going to have to return to a med center. And med centers, the fiction there is, you reappear with a back to tank.
basically it's called a medical droid. So when you hit the medical droid option, it says a medical droid has been dispatched, and it literally brings you up. And yeah, you're in stealth, but you've also got a lowered health, so you have enough time to get away from where you might be aggroing other monsters, and then you can heal up. A couple of other things to mention is everybody has a self heal. So as soon as you're out of combat, you can hit that self heal and just get yourself straight back up to maximum health. And in addition, everybody has the ability to revive a fallen group mate. So as long as you're out of combat again, you can basically bring them straight back up again without that medical droid / medical center sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, there is a enormous thread discussing this on the forums, in which Georg Zola, who's our lead combat designer, has talked about it a lot. But what James said is true. Essentially, we don't want an extremely harsh, punishing death system. We still do have armor decay. You know, armor gets sort of gradually beaten down, and if you were in that scenario of going again and again, you know, whether it's medical droid or a medical center, you would ultimately break your armor, and you'd have to go get that repaired. So there are various things to ensure that you can't just, the example being, you can't just, you know, take a boss down by 1/3 health, get killed, go to immediately res in place, and go back and attack him again. You know, we sort of guard against that.
I know there's a thread on the boards right now that's talking about they're worried that we're going to make the game too easy. That's actually the opposite of what we're trying to do right now, especially with the death system. We want to make... one of the things about game design is you want to make a game challenging, but not too challenging. If it's too challenging, players get frustrated. If it's not challenging enough, players get too bored. And most massively multiplayer games are balanced right now in the modern day to the too easy, so you can easily get bored. In the past, massive multiplayer games have been balanced to that they're too hard, and you get frustrated when you die and have to run for 5 hours to get back to your corpse. So we're trying to take... we're trying to make it so that it's similar to almost like a reload, so that we can have those more difficult fights where you have to think about it and you know, and rethink your strategy. Where you're like, well, I just went in there, that didn't work. I'm going to try it again. Then maybe you have to wait a minute, and then you might have to try it a third time.
I'm getting a ton of questions about this on Twitter. Even though I know the answer to us, I got to ask it. Arcane123 is the one I pulled up. It says, can you please refine BioWare's holiday 2011 window? When does it start and when does it end?
Nope.
Holiday is all you get for now.
Yep. As we get closer to it, we'll definitely be refining it.
All right, question over here.
All right, so our PvP arenas on your Wall of Crazy, and what are you guys going to do to make open world PvP better? Like, what incentives are you going to give for open world PvP?
Come back and talk to us in a month.
Someone over here had a question, right?
My question is, for looking for groups, how is that going to work in your game? And are you going to alleviate people that are going to be looking for groups for like 30 to 40 plus minutes?
So we're going to have the basic looking for group functionality that one would expect in a modern day MMO. We also have some new ideas that we're not talking about right now that are in the early testing phase, so actually in early implementation phase, so they haven't even been tested, so I can't really talk about them right now. But it is, we want a very social game, so we want to make looking for group, like finding a group, really easy. In fact, we've gone through 2 stages. We've been making a whole bunch of adjustments to the game to make grouping, to change the game so that the players want to group. So there's lots of incentives to group right now in Star Wars: The Old Republic. And now that we've got people to want to group, we're trying to add in functionality that will make it easy to group.
Back on Twitter, Ngravy asks, are the items from pre-order account bound, or are they a one-time use only thing? In other words, do you get them on all your characters, or just one?
We'll be answering that later.
Sounds good. You had a question, right?
I had a question. So the ships that we get, are we only going to have, will we combine to the one for your class, or will there be different ones that we can unlock or something like that later on, just in case you're not too crazy about the one your class currently has?
Currently, the ship you get is based off your class, and if you don't like it, you're going to be very sad for a long time. But they're all really cool, so I don't think you're going to... Every single ship is pretty awesome. We actually, one of the... we regularly give out prizes to people within the studio if they play the game to a certain point. It's to encourage people to finish the game. And one of the prizes was actually this really cool poster of basically a schematic of your ship. And so we had one for every single ship, and they're really awesome. Hopefully at some point, Never mind, I'm not going to say anything.
I'm getting a bunch of questions on Twitter from various people. We've said that we've got light side rewards and dark side rewards depending on your alignment. What about for people who want to stay right in the middle as a gray area?
As a neutral?
Yes.
What makes them? Anyway, I'm not going to do that gag.
Yes, if you decide to, thread the needle and you decide to be a neutral character, there are items specifically for you.
Actually, I had a question about the starship system. When it comes to PvP, we'll be able to use our ships in player versus and like field battles later on in the patch probably. Do you guys have plans for that?
So the question is, are you going to be able to use your starship in PvP scenarios? Not for ship. So that's a big feature. So we're not really talking about that right now.
DC Creator on Twitter would like Steven to know that he's got a white thread on his shirt, and they can see it on the internet. It's right here. Thank you, DC Creator.
That's a good camera.
Thank you very much. I had a question right here. How does lag... sorry, this is Mr. Fisky. How does lag or internet issues affect being in the middle of a cutscene or dialogue?
That's a very specific question.
How does lag affect a cutscene and conversation? Well, hopefully, and this is one of the reasons we're taking our time, it doesn't at all. But currently it does have an effect, but we're actually making adjustments so that that entire system is much less server-bound.
So you talked about there being decay in armor. Will there be decay in weapons as well?
Yeah, right.
Yes. The question was, will there be decay in weapons? That was my answer, yes.
You have to repair things that get broken.
What about our coloring of gear? Can we change how our gear looks wise? Like, say in Warhammer right now, if you find another item that you like, you can take the skin of that onto your current armor.
Currently, your armor looks the way it is when it's got one appearance. So if you find a chest piece, it's always going to look like a chest piece. Though we do have unified colors, which allows you to actually unify the color of your uniforms. And have we talked about that much? No.
We've talked about locking the color to the chest piece.
Yeah.
And yeah, talked about that. Because if we hadn't, you just did. So, you know.
I have a bunch of people asking, will I be able to invite my friends to hang out on my spaceship?
Well, that's a very interesting question. Can you have your friends come into your starship? Can't answer that right now.
I was curious about Guild Wars. Guild Wars, I'm gonna play World of Warcraft a lot, and I don't like guilds, and I want to destroy them. Will I be able to destroy them? I don't like a guild.
Oh, so if the question is if you have another guild on the other side, can you destroy them? Well, you can search. You can, I guess, hunt them down, look for their names, the guild name.
I don't think we can wipe them from the face of the server. That would be extreme.
I have a lot of people asking about all the pre-order items. Is it safe to say that we'll have more details about those in the future?
Yes.
Yeah, if we're talking about the virtual items, then yeah,
Yes.
we will do.
T. Erickson says, can a bounty hunter fly around in his jetpack without actually using an ability?
Yeah, we have full 3D flight that only the bounty hunter has access to. It's pretty cool. I'm just kidding. No,
Kill
no,
me.
he
You
can't.
kill me. Good question. Do you have one? Oh. Anyone else? While I refresh my twits.
Last couple, I
Tweets.
guess.
Yeah. You got one? Awesome.
Will dark side and light side affect endgame rating or PvP?
Will dark side or light side affect end game PvP and rating, or as we like to call it, ops? No. However, the items that drop, well, no.
Well, we've talked about light side, dark side items in the past. But yes, it's not going to affect your operations experience.
Let's see. On Twitter, Big O2 Mags wants to know, can we please have an Ewok companion?
This is a tough one.
Actually, it's surprising how many people have asked for us to put Ewoks into the game.
You get a Jawa if you play a bounty hunter.
Yeah, Jawas are pretty cool. And I do prefer Ewoks to Gungans. So I guess You will see an Ewok companion before you see a Gungan companion.
But that is not saying that you will see one in the game at ship.
Oh yeah, neither of those in ship.
Thank you.
Rutgers Kev asks, if your group mate wins the role to kill someone, but you chose to let him live, will he be dead in your storyline?
Yes, he will be dead in your storyline.
But to be clear, that could only happen in a world quest as opposed to your personal class story. In your personal class story, you're the one who makes the decisions, not the group.
Are you able to queue for PvP with more than 4 people?
No.
Oh, you mean as a group?
As a
group larger than 4.
Yes, you mean as a group?
Yeah, you can queue. No, you can queue as a group of 4, but you can't queue in a operation group of 8 or 16 or 20 or something like that.
A few people are asking, I'm going to call out ToroCast because they're asking, can people create both factions on a single server?
Yeah, we answered that question yesterday. You can indeed do that.
And as I said yesterday, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's something that's in testing. And also, as I said yesterday, there may be reasons beyond just throwing both factions on one server together for us to allow that to happen.
Ooh. Sorcerer Biggs wants to point out that Mr. Daniel Erickson has said that Ewoks weren't discovered yet in the time of our game.
Maybe it travels back in time.
Hopefully with a DeLorean.
Maybe it's an Ewok ancestor that's 20 foot tall.
I don't think
giant
Daniel's
teddy bear.
a very big fan of Ewoks. But neither am I.
Someone asks if we can make the Wall of Crazy into a t-shirt that we then sell.
Maybe post-launch.
That would be a pretty big... Yeah, I don't know if they would all fit on one T-shirt. There's a lot of features you could put into Star Wars. You should see the size of that wall.
Ashalena wants to know, if you wipe in a flashpoint on a boss repeatedly, are you eventually going to run into respawn trash on the way to that boss?
Well, this kind of connects back to the death system stuff that we talked about earlier on. Can you still use the medical droid in a flashpoint?
No. So this is something we'll have more details on exactly how that would work.
I'm just checking one last time. Let's see if we're all caught up. Anyone else in the crowd before we wrap this up? Mr. Mako? Darth Hader?
What about dance animations? Are we just going to do like one dance per race or class, or multiple?
Currently, we only have one per class. Different per gender.
Oh, I see one guy over here. All right, let's make this the last question. Make it a good one.
So, if in your guild, will you be able to have a capital ship that you can go into battle with?
See the Wall of Crazy. That's been... we've answered this many times. And I can quote James almost verbatim, which was, many of the senior designers in the studio like the idea of guild capital ships. And that's why they're on the Wall of Crazy. But we're not going to guarantee that they're going to be there for ship.
I actually have one last question, because I think we can actually maybe answer this one. Ask a Jedi wants to know, why wasn't Deceived chosen to be the intro trailer? Since it was last in the series, players who play the game might not actually be aware of those events.
Well...
Can we say what...
Well, no, I see the point.
But you know
the intro, yeah. Well, the intro cinematic, yes, chronologically, Deceived is the last in the series. And the way that the game works is the intro cinematic, which is Return, plays when you start the game. But then depending on which faction you select, you're going to see either Hope or Deceived. And we may have a different voiceover, possibly.
Yeah, like we have all three appear in the game. One is the as what Mr. Reed said. But one of the reasons that we made when we first made Deceived, we didn't actually know we were going to have 3 full movies. We thought we were only going to have 2, so that kind of adjusted things. That's the honest answer.
I didn't lie.
No, I know, but I'm just saying that's the sometimes we got lucky and we were able to have that 3rd Blur movie, which was quite cool.
All right, one more question.
Why don't you guys make a movie or a show out of the cinematics?
Unfortunately, that's not our decision to make. And if you like the idea, feel free to take it up with Lucasfilm.
All right, I think that's it. Let's
Thanks
Thank
very much for
everybody.
coming up, guys. Hope everyone enjoyed PvP here at the BioWare base and our answers on BioWare Pulse. And we'll see you out on the forums.
And the next show we'll be at this year, where is that going to be, Stephen?
The next show we will be at will be PAX Prime in Seattle, in North America, that is. But we will, of course, be coming to Germany as part of Gamescom in, I guess, the second week of August.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you, everybody on the internet, for your questions. And have a great weekend.